Hey everyone, this is Kyle Turk. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Natural Products Association. I'm here with Adele. He is the President and CEO of Leaf Labs Organics. Thanks for joining us, Adele.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the natural products industry.
It's interesting. It wasn't a career plan, so it wasn't my college counselor. I remember a friend of mine asking me, hey, did your college counselor recommend you get into the dietary supplement industry? And so this was '96 when I entered the industry, about 2 years after DeShay. So I would say very early on in its coming of age period. The industry existed much for many years before '96. But I do say that I entered the industry in a transition phase, and it was a good one. I always had an enjoyment for science. So I love science, and that is really what brought me here. It was a degree in biochemistry, so that was my college degree. That's what I was going to school for, and it was the biological sciences that interested me the most. Molecular biology. Cell biology, the biochemistry, and so I also there was also an emphasis in nutrition. So I used to take a lot of nutrition courses, and I remember in the early years a fascination with what's going on inside our bodies. There's two particular things that attracted me. I think bone metabolism was very interesting. People don't know this, but our bones are going through a growth period and they're going through a resorption period, which means you're gaining bone and you're losing bone. This is a dynamic process that's happening every day on a regular basis. It was also controlled by nutrition. So when I was in school and I was taking biochemistry, and most of these classes that I enjoyed was organic chemistry, biochemistry. Most of these students are going to be doctors. But I was a late bloomer. I had no career goals. I just loved biochemistry, and I loved biology. And the supplement industry did not have an impact on consumer health. It was a battle, and the winners of it was always drugs. It's the drug companies and it's the doctors that know what's best for our health. But when I was in school, I was finding out otherwise. What I realized on that bone metabolism, and again, who thinks of bone metabolism? If you're growing, and I found out that from the age of up until the age of 30, if you don't put enough bone on your bone mass, after that you lose more bone than you put on, and disease can set on. And if you're 12, 13, 14 years old, 18 years old, and you're growing, and you don't have calcium in your diet and phosphorus and all these minerals in your diet, nobody tells you that, hey, what if your hormones turned on the growth period today and there's no calcium circulating in your blood because you just didn't eat calcium or take a calcium supplement? Then you're not going to die, you're not going to be ill, but that day your ability to grow bone, add height to your body just didn't happen. Now, who spends their life knowing, hey, am I on metabolic calcium or bone metabolic phase at this instant? Nobody knows this. So the idea that the only people that knew best for us were doctors and drug companies, I realized that wasn't the case. It was nutrition knew best for us. But where do you get nutrition from? Food. I don't know about you, but I didn't like to eat the right foods growing up. My parents couldn't get me to eat vegetables. They couldn't get me to eat the right stuff. So if nutrition plays such a critical part in bone metabolism, and you don't have access to it, where are you going to get it? And these were some of the early concepts that really stood with me. I had no career goals. I didn't care to be a doctor. And the other one was apoptosis, fancy words. It's a fancy word for cell suicide. So I realized there was an industry, and sorry for the long intro, but I realized there was an industry that could really benefit the consumer who doesn't know what apoptosis is, doesn't know what bone metabolism is. But if we can educate a consumer and we can ensure that they're taking dietary supplements to support their diet, then we can really create a much healthier society. So I was amazed that when I entered the career world, this wasn't the case. Doctors didn't talk about this, drug companies didn't talk about this, but there was a dietary supplement industry that did, and that's where I landed. My first job out of college was at a company called Natrol, an incredible company that adopted me because I had a strong science background. And in '96, the industry was beginning to educate the consumer. Fortunately, because DeShay allowed us to educate the consumer, allowed us to make structure function claims so that the consumer can benefit from the knowledge that the industry was beginning to acquire through hiring scientists. So my first job out of school was in the dietary supplement industry. Interestingly, I started in product development, even though, I started in customer service, even though I was a scientist, but I moved up the ranks very quickly. The industry adopted me, the company treated me well, and allowed me to work through regulations, work through quality control, and eventually developing products, which is what I enjoyed. So this long intro was, how did I end up in this industry, and why do I love it so much? Because again, the consumer doesn't realize, well, they know, but they rely on us to educate them and to bring products into market that can play a role in their health. Long intro, but I'm a scientist in an industry that is very science driven and continues to expand and benefit consumers, consumer health and nutrition.
No, that's a great answer, and I think it's important that you covered all those different types of parts of your career. You've been a member of NPA for a number of years and have been quite involved in our political process, whether it be our fly-in day or financially contributing to our PAC. As a business owner and someone that's as devoted to the industry as you are, can you talk a little bit about NPA PAC and the involvement that it provides you?
Yes. And luckily I met Dan early in my career. It wasn't until I started my own company, but the value of being part of NPA, and we tell our clients all the time, it's critical. Remember I mentioned DeShay was important for the industry, and a lot of people that entered the industry years later don't realize the impact that it had. And there were pioneers in the industry that fought to get the industry to be recognized by the FDA, and the FDA now governs and regulates the industry, and it's recognized as a separate industry. And this was the early pioneers that drove this. NPA has always been a driver of this, making sure that Washington is aware of the benefits of this industry, and they do an incredible job of really predicting where the threats are to an industry that, as I just mentioned, plays an incredible role in consumer health and nutrition. So yeah, these flybys are awesome. You get to go to D.C. and meet meet Congress, and some of these laws, if we're vigilant, if we're not vigilant, they can hurt the industry. Not because they want to get rid of an industry, but many times they might not be fully informed. So that's an opportunity for us to talk to Congress and educate them on the regulations, the rigors of our industry, the benefits of our industry, and to make sure that they know what's important to our industry, so that when time comes to vote, they're not putting laws that could take us backwards. Our industry has come a long way, highly regulated, and these are important. Even in California, I know I did one in California. I think I've done a couple in California. California is such a big state. Sometimes they're not in line with the rest of the country, and you can have a law that might be put up, or a potential bill that might come up, and if we're not paying attention, it could really hurt the industry. So NPA, these flybys are awesome. Gives you an opportunity to talk to politicians and make sure that they're in line with us and that they understand our industry.
That's great. And at a time when there is legislative gridlock right now, what are some of the other ways that NPA and our political involvement has helped you and has helped the industry at large?
So NPA is very active. I see them move the needle. I see so I pay attention, and what I tell, we're a contract manufacturer. What I tell my clients, which are brands, there are organizations like NPA that ensure that there's an environment for us to be able to thrive as an industry. And when COVID hit, that's a perfect example. I saw, so COVID hits, and some of the counties, states, cities begin to shut down, and some of the early published, the early shelter in place was essential businesses can continue, right? So all we knew was essential business. We didn't know what the definitions were. And there was a couple of published, governor in California published one, and the word food comes out as essential. LA did the same thing, and the word food comes out, and I quickly went back, read our regulatory language, and the word food came out in a couple of areas on DSHEA and the laws that govern dietary supplements. And I immediately called Dan. So I call into Dan and say, hey, Dan, Daniel Fabricant, the CEO of NPA, and I said, California just went shelter in place. LA is going shelter in place. San Francisco went shelter in place. Los Angeles is going shelter in place. The word food comes up. I read the language. We're food, right? Dan says, Adele, the store shelves are empty of dietary supplements. The consumers are looking for this. They need their immune products. We are essential, and we need to keep the industry open. We were getting phone calls from our clients, and they're saying, hey, we got to shut down. What are you guys going to do? And I said, no, we're talking to NPA food. It's essential, and the shelves are empty. We need to make sure we're producing products. The consumers are going to be looking for products to help, deal with, making sure they stay healthy during this time. And within a week after the initial call, I remember getting the email. I think it came from you, where this is about to put the word dietary supplement as essential business. We immediately put that out into the airways to our competitors, our other contract manufacturers, and to brands, to now fully the country, federally, we're an essential business. Let's make sure that we do our part and make sure consumers have access to healthy products, immune products, anything to make sure that their health, that they maximize their health, especially since COVID is a health scare. So this is swift action, but this is the way I've always seen NPA act. It seems like they're always predicting what may happen, and I believe it's NPA is very active in Washington, always hearing what legislation potentially could be a threat, or what legislation could be a benefit that we should be standing behind. I think one of the projects that Dan's been working on for some time is to trying to get HSAs to pay for dietary supplements, right? For vitamins, right?
Yes.
These are things that NPA is working on. Again, looking at the end consumer and the benefits to this, to make sure you can stretch your dollars as far as you can to make sure you maintain your health. We want to stay healthy. We don't want to end up at the doctor's office or at using drugs. We want to be able to mitigate that, and that's what our industry does. So I think the NPA is very proactive in being one of the first out in Washington to make sure if there's something that's going to hurt the industry, they immediately take action. And I've seen them succeed time and time again. But we got to make sure we're supporting, the PAC, right? The NPA PAC. This isn't done, without cost. There are resources required. That's why, at Leaf we're constantly, making sure that people are aware that there's a PAC. And me personally, I'm always, I love the industry. I'm always personally, making sure that I'm supporting the PAC. I make sure that people in the industry know that they can personally support the PAC so that there's resources to make sure that our industry continues to thrive, and NPA does a great job of that.
Yeah, that's great. And to the point on HSAs, I think it's one of the issues that we've been pushing really hard, even pre-COVID, where, you know, folks are putting dollars away in these pre-taxed accounts. They should have the opportunity to have greater choice as to what they're able to purchase. And speaking to NPA PAC, since its inception, it's supported public policies like expanding HSAs that align with the association's core values. Can you speak to some of the issues that the industry is currently facing when groups like the Clean Label Project incite fear by utilizing misinformation? Unfortunately, this can sway the opinions of not just consumers, but lawmakers as well.
You know what? So one area is that they you know, force lawmakers' hands when there's no science to this. The other you know, threat is when they mislead the consumers, and that I have a hard time with that. You know, you know, there's freedom of press, you know, and I believe in that, and freedom of speech, and you know, social media has access to consumers. When something like the Clean Label Project comes out, it sounds good, and to a consumer it sounds good. Excuse me, to a politician it sounds good, but unfortunately, you know, there's no science behind the idea that our products are introducing, you know, compounds, chemicals to consumers that can potentially be a risk to their health. Our industry has been around for you know, DSHEA passed in 1994, but our industry has been around for a while, and we are founded on science. So the idea that, you know, I mean, I hate to hear this, you know, when excipients, they say excipients, which excipients are you know, what's the term? They're pretty benign. Well, they're benign, but there's another term. They don't react. So excipients, they don't cause a detriment to health, and they don't cause a positive, but in reality, actually, silica does have a benefit. It's not an essential mineral, but there is a benefit to silica, you know, in your nails and skin, so there actually is a benefit. But when you hear, you know, these groups like Clean Label Project, where they misinform legislation, that becomes problematic. When I think a couple of times Massachusetts, Illinois have tried to enact certain laws that or minimizing access to the consumer, but it's not founded on science. It's fear mongering, and a politician hears this and they think they're doing a benefit to consumers. It becomes problematic. And I know NPA has been very active, and I know they've averted a couple of these in the last couple of years. They've been able to keep certain states from enacting their own legislation that will be you know, counter to giving consumers access to beneficial health products or nutrition products, but also you know, confusing the fact that the FDA already has clear legislation in place with DSHEA. They have GMPs in place. What we want to do is we want to make sure that the FDA is supported and they have the funds to be able to go and enforce some of these laws that already protect the consumers. The idea that we don't have this in place is ridiculous, and you know, unfortunately, you know, this thought pops up, and you may have a politician that's trying to get elected, and you know, we understand, but it is our job, it is our industry's job, and NPA does this very well, but it's the industry's job to make sure that elected officials know that we support GMPs, know that we support DSHEA. We do a good job of policing ourselves, but it's a never-ending battle. We will continue to police the industry. We will continue to support FDA to make sure that they're policing the industry. But Clean Label Project, projects like these are very detrimental, and luckily NPA can see through these, keeps themselves informed, and informs the rest of the industry. But if you're not involved with NPA, if you're not a member in NPA, and if you're not a client of ours who tries to inform you as much as we can, then the resources that we should be contributing to ensure that a group like NPA continues to protect the industry, it's not doing our industry a service if we're not joining groups like NPA.
There's more than just the presidential election coming up this November. Obviously, that gets a lot of attention, but what's on tap this year includes 435 races for the House of Representatives, 33 U.S. Senate seats, 45 state legislative races, 11 states holding gubernatorial races, 10 states holding attorney general's races, and then 7 states are holding their own Secretary of State races. What are some of the consequences of potentially not being involved with not just NPA, but our political action committee as well?
Yeah, I say that which the numbers that you just mentioned are a little scary. And again, you know, our political system is there for a reason, and it's important. But when you have these new seats, you know, sometimes you know, a potential freshman may want to make a name for themselves, and it's really easy to say. And I've heard this before. You know, our industry could easily be attacked, and if we don't defend it, you know, it's our fault. You know, I hate to hear that our industry is a snake oil industry. You heard what I said in the beginning. We sell calcium supplements, we sell magnesium, phosphorus. How is that snake oil? You know, you know, people might say, well, I take calcium, I don't feel anything. Yeah, you know, I'm 7 3/4. I wish I was, you know, could I have been 5'9" or maybe 5'10"? It's not snake oil. You know, you don't grow by breathing, you know, nutrition into your body. So the idea that we're snake oil salesmen, it's really easy to jump on that wagon and use that as a platform to enact law, to make a name for yourself, whereas it should be quite the opposite. You just said 435 seats. That's a lot. And ever since I joined NPA, I've been very active in making sure that I form relationships with local congressmen. I think, you know, I got a good friend that supports the industry and you know, takes dietary supplements. And there are several others that I've met because of my involvement with NPA. And really, it is our job to let them know that, hey, you know, we're a regulated industry. I hope you realize that. I don't know if you've heard otherwise. There are benefits to our industry, and this is how our industry supports nutrition and how our industry supports health. If we're not talking to them, us as organizations, if we don't spend that time, you know, what if they hear the Clean Label, you know, Act, and it sounds attractive and it sounds good, but that's not good for the industry. And if our industry and if companies are not involved, and again, my joining NPA immediately made me realize the benefit to our industry, and it's my career. It's what I enjoy. It's not, you know, everything's focused on the presidential election. I would say that's important for our industry, but nowhere near as important as those 435 seats that you talk about, those 33 U.S. Senate seats. I could only reach so much. So the more people that join NPA very active in making sure they tell you who are your local congressmen, that you should be taking the time to get to know them and informing them. And you'll be surprised how supportive a congressman will be to our industry once you provide them information, once you invite them to your facilities and let them see what we're doing. You let them know that we're regulated by the FDA, which eventually they realize that we are. And we have so many laws that protect consumers, but we also have so many laws that give consumers access. So, you know, me as an organization, we can only reach so many. If we can get a greater group of individuals with NPA so that we can spread ourselves out and educate as many Congress members as we can, our industry can continue to thrive. So very critical. I mean, that 435 number is a little scary. It's a lot. And if we're not informing and educating, we can really hurt our industry in just one election.
That's exactly right. And with so many candidates on the ballot this year, how does NPA PAC determine what candidates to support, which ones not to support?
So so luckily I'm an NPA member. An NPA, I know if a candidate is favorable to the industry, and I've gotten to know how NPA functions. And what they do is they'll send out questionnaires to all you know, candidates at the federal level, and based on the questionnaires, NPA and the relationships NPA can identify which candidates to support. And this information goes out to all NPA members. So election season, especially this one that we're coming up against, the amount of potential seats that are up for grabs. If you don't know, like I said earlier, if you don't know which candidate or candidates are pro dietary supplement industry, one election can really have a bad impact on our industry. So it's very important. And then NPA is also bipartisan group, and supporting the NPA PAC. It's bipartisan, and it is an organization that is driven for the industry and industry only. So I can't stress enough to colleagues, to clients, anybody in the industry, being part of NPA, the benefits to the entire industry, which we all benefit from, are critical. And if NPA, we're the ones that provide the resources. And if we're going to play in this industry and succeed in the industry, it's important that we contribute those resources. You don't want to have the industry as a group feel that somebody else will cover the resources. No, because if the resources dry up and something bad happens, your company can be affected negatively, and then you wish you would have spent the resources to ensure that we have a regulatory environment that's beneficial to the industry. So critical, I couldn't stress it enough. NPA has done a great job for our industry, and a lot of us who are part of it know how and realize it. Many of you who are not don't realize what happens and why it's important to be politically involved, but also to be a part of a group like the NPA.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think, to your point, there's too many names on the ballot this year to not be involved with our association and the political action committee that we also run. So side of things, because this is the dietary supplement industry and we care about health and wellness, what do you do to stay healthy?
So we got a gym. So we're building a gym in our facility, and we have challenges. So as an organization, prior to COVID, and it's a little frustrating, but every month our organization signs up to 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. We're very charitable, so we find charity running events. We've got about 150 employees, and we generally get anywhere from 20 to up to 50 participating in some of these running events. So we challenge ourselves as an organization where we put in a gym in the facility, and so my dietary supplement of choice is still protein and a multivitamin. Those are the things that I do, and the reason I do that is because my diet is pretty. I tend to cheat a little on my diet, but I make sure that I got my dietary supplements, and that's the way I do it. There are some individuals that don't cheat on their diet, and their diet is very solid. I enjoy food too much. I make sure I get all my supplements. I make sure I support my diet with a multivitamin and a protein.
No, that's great. Thank you. We appreciate your time today. And if you would like to get more information about NPA and our political action committee, you can visit us at npanational.org/advocacy. Adele, thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate everything.
Thanks.
Take care.